Today we are going to take a look at The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang. Um, Andrew Yang was candidate for in the Democratic primary in 2020 this year. Um, so the main thing he's talking about this book isn't so much as UBI, which is something he advocated during his campaign, as much as he's talking about why automation is such a big problem, especially for what he calls normal people. Which I mean, it seems like a good definition. He generally captures them as being using the median of all Americans, which is you're making around 30,000, and on average you started college but you didn't finish, or your high school have a high school diploma is what would be normal. And he brings up a lot of stuff about automation. Specifically, he talks a lot about trucking and how that's all going to be automated out in a very clear way. And for a huge swath of middle America, the most common profession is trucker. So you're just gonna a whole bunch of jobs are going to be eliminated once the switch to automation happens. And he says it's not so much a matter of if, but when. And the evidence is fairly compelling when you look at the numbers he gives in terms of cost basis of things, cost basis of having a truck driver versus an automated one. And once they get that rolling, it's not even going to be close. Teamsters might slow them down, but it's going to happen at some point. And then you're going to have a whole bunch of displaced Americans. He calls this just enormous wave of automation coming in a whole bunch of different industries, the Great Displacement. Um, and it's going to be especially bad for a lot of truck drivers. Acquired a lot of debt to buy their own trucks, and they're going to be out of luck because they're not going to be able to do anything with those trucks because it's just going to be cheaper to use automated trucks. Um, and Another thing is any job that is routine or repeatable is going to be automated, not just truck drivers. He talks about how call centers are going to be hybridized and eventually they're going to be automated as well. Talks about how up to 80% of doctor jobs or surgeries are like routine, and you could get a robot to do those, and the robot probably makes fewer errors anyways. He highlights that in a couple places that uh, AI performs better than humans do on anything that's routine. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be this huge movement where jobs are going to be very polarized. They're going to be either largely like untrained service type jobs at the low level, and the high level, the highly technical jobs that involve a lot of synthesis and non-repetitive tasks and technical skill. And all this in the middle is all going to go away because it's going to be automated out. So the middle class is going to just be driven under. And he cites just a whole ton of evidence. I mean, I don't have it all memorized, but then he gives a few solutions to the problem he has described in like the first 60% of the book, which is automation. He talks about universal basic income, uh, and the way he argues for paying. Oh wait, before we get to that, he talks a lot about how important jobs are for humans psychologically. Like one of the statistics that was interesting was that for long-term mental health, being displaced and losing your job is worse for you in the long term if you get removed from the workforce, which is increasingly what's happening, especially in Middle America. There's like disability claims are like 3x what they were like 3 decades ago or something. Just a very large increase. If you're displaced from your job, it has more negative long-term effects on mental health than losing a limb or like getting a permanent injury or losing a loved one. Although there are studies that show that like you kind of just return to baseline, but there's no returning to baseline if you're ejected from the workforce. In terms of happiness, was what the study he cited seemed to indicate. Anyways, so for UBI, Universal Basic Income, what he advocates is uh, what is it? Value added tax, or VAT, as a means for paying for it. And one of the big justifications for UBI, Universal Basic Income, is that as far as welfare programs go, it's a lot more effective at getting people what they need than giving them targeted money for specific things. And so just putting cash in people's hands is good. Pays for it with the value added tax, which is you just add, I forget the percentage he uses, it's like 8% or something, tax to everything. And uh, with the dividend, this would pay for a $1,000 a month dividend, and that would make things cheap, or that would be good for anyone who's making like under 120 grand, whatever the percentage was. Maybe it was 10%. In terms of how it shakes out, because you're paying a little bit more for everything, but you're getting $12,000 a year. Uh, Specifically, this is also a good way to. Companies have to pay this when they buy goods, and specifically, what this does is it helps to make sure that companies are able to be taxed in a way that they aren't otherwise. For example, Amazon hasn't paid taxes for several years because of creative accounting, let's say. I'm not certain of all the details. I'm pretty sure it's because they're not showing a profit, because they're reinvesting all their money, but they're still growing in an enormous way, and the valuation of the company is growing. So the people who own the company are getting wealth, even if the company is not showing profit. And so that's more of a in-depth just like analysis of Amazon, which isn't what this book's about. Um, in addition to UBI, which I think is kind of the main thing he advocates for social programs that are helpful to society in terms of making people feel like they have a sense of community and trying to get that back. Um, One of the things is like it's like community points or something. He calls it something else, I think. But the idea is you trade favors to people. If you give people favors, then you earn community points, and you can spend that on favors for other people. And he makes an argument as why psychologically this is a little bit different than exchanging money, and why it can help people give meaning. So, for example, I have a broken cabinet. I put a thing out that says I need someone help me with a cabinet, and someone responds to it, and I give them points. Something like this, one of the main arguments for it is the government, it would cost them almost no money. They just have to set it up and let it rip. So there's other solutions in there that he talks about. He uses the term human capitalism, which is largely because he thinks we're reaching a turning point in history where automation is going to dramatically shift the landscape of employment, and it's going to be extremely difficult to adapt in a very quick basis. So we need to make sure our capitalism, it's not just us working for our capitalism, but our capitalism working for us, which is a cute turn of phrase, but I think there's something there. So for the ratings, for utility, I gave it a 6.5. This is largely to the degree if you're politically active. These sorts of things should probably, automation and AI should definitely be on your radar, even if you disagree with UBI. I still would want to know more about the effect of value-added tax before I think I would support his proposal, which is a value-added tax to pay for UBI, so you get UBI with a value-added tax. But another reason why I think this book was useful was if you have no idea. In particular, I wish I read this book in high school. It was when I was thinking about my future. Just knowing the landscape of how jobs are evolving, I think would be incredibly useful. And if you currently aren't on a path, or your path is going to quickly be swallowed up by automation, I think this book is really good. I think if you're outside those spheres, that this book is maybe not so useful. So, to the degree to which it can help you just be aware of automation and avoid entering an industry that is going to be swallowed by automation, it's useful, and it's also useful for political stuff, but other than that, maybe not so much. Entertainment, I gave it a 4.5. The writing's okay, the stuff's interesting, but I mean it's quite a bit of statistics, as well as him talking about his experiences, and It's not the most riveting. It's not like terrible or anything, but okay, it's not. It wasn't entertaining. I don't think. I thought it was very interesting to peel back the layers of how severe the automation stuff is going on. He talks about how large portions of America are living in a bubble, like the coastal affluent areas, and they're not aware of what's going on in middle America because the statistics don't properly reflect it, and if they've never been there, it's really hard to appreciate. They're like ghost towns with severe economic problems. People are leaving middle America to move to the coasts. There's like a brain drain. It seems very like the statistics don't fully capture it because a lot of people leave the workforce and never come back, and unemployment doesn't capture those people, and they leave because they got automated out of their job or the steel mill closed or what have you, and it's those aren't captured by unemployment, and neither are people moving to disability, and disability is just like erupted in Middle America, and it's most of the claims are like mental health related, which are difficult to prove, and the lawyers for drafting up mental illness-based unemployment, that industry is quite booming. So, um, if you're going to be paying out to people anyways, you might as well not do disability and instead do a freedom dividend is one of the arguments he makes, especially because disability disincentivizes work because if you demonstrate that you can work, you lose the disability, so there's a huge risk. Whereas with the freedom dividend, it doesn't disincentivize work, except to the degree which you're not starving to death, I guess. Um, like no one wants to live off of 12,000 a year. That's not a comfy lifestyle, but it doesn't make it so you don't want to. You want to work, but just to get further ahead. For novelty, I give it a 9. I think this is one of those things where if you don't know what's going on, uh, in regards to automation, or you have no idea, that knowing is really important because I don't. I think it's going to affect a huge. I don't think anything is completely insulated from the effects that are going to happen that he describes, and I think he makes a fairly compelling argument for it. So if you're completely caught off guard by this automation wave, I think that would be bad. So I scored it high for novelty, because for practical reasons, if you don't know what's going on, uh, it's going to be a problem. For style, I gave it a 4. Um, Not the best writer, not terrible, but like there was nothing that like I wanted to tear my hair out. But it was also just it felt like mostly just statistics, evidence, quotes, which is fine because that it gave me what I wanted out of this book, which was knowledge about automation. For readability, I gave it a 6.5. Um, he's pretty clear. There are a lot of graphs. It's broken up into really nice sized sections. The flow is like pretty good. For difficulty, I gave it a 6.5. It's fairly accessible. Although interestingly, in the beginning of the book, he talks about normal Americans, and in that he talks about how the people reading this book are very likely to be college graduates. So the people reading this book aren't even capturing what he calls like normal Americans because normal Americans aren't college graduates, and so I thought that that little tidbit was interesting. I think it's certainly readable for anyone who wants to take a crack at it. Um, I would recommend this book um, to high schoolers who have no idea what they want to do with their lives, or perhaps college students who have no idea what they want to do with their lives. And I would also recommend it to um, people who are involved in some way, shape, or form politics. And then I would recommend it to people who are in industries that are getting swallowed by automation so they can plan for the future. So, like, I would recommend it to truckers. The call center stuff's going to get automated out if that the stuff that hasn't been shipped overseas. Just any type of task that is repetitive and doesn't require uh, like much in the way of I don't want to say thinking, but like dynamic responses to situations. Because a lot of AI can definitely think, but it can only think in certain types of ways. And so fast food is going to get swallowed up. You're going to have like kiosks and stuff. Um, the stuff that's like on the safer side is going to be more service oriented stuff and entertainment. as far as the not highly technical jobs go, and then highly technical jobs are going to be safer. The people who work with the stuff. Anyways, if you like this, feel free to give it a like, subscribe, or comment. Um, Comments on this especially would be appreciated because I think it's actually something. Automation's something like worth discussing and also worth seeing where people are thinking either it's horrible or it's not a problem at. Yang talks about objections and he gives responses to them in his book, but I think it's with political things especially, it's important to see where other people are coming from, and because knowing where they're coming from really helps you understand how to solve the problem in a bipartisan way that would be good for everyone instead of just being two ships sailing past each other in the night. So, anyways, hope you enjoyed.